Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Mauricio. I am a product designer. I'm the creative director for EF. And on my journey to create products that help people to transform their lives, I came across a very interesting way to transform my own. And I'd like to share the story with you today. But first, I want to open with a question. How many times during the week do you sit in your computer, you open your laptop maybe, and you need access to your information? You need access to your computer. How many times a week you have to type a password? But more importantly, what is your password? No, don't tell me. If I'm correct, I think at least 20 people in this theater right now use a password like this. That guy there. He's like, yes. Some of you might use a special date, something that you want to remember. Just in case you forget your anniversary, maybe you use that. Maybe you use a special nickname, right? So in my case, a password became something different. Passwords are very personal things. Passwords keep our information private, right? They protect us in a way. And for me, this input field did something else. It didn't really protect me, but it did something else. I want to share that story with you today. So my story began in 2008 when I was just on my own. And then I met a beautiful woman wearing a red dress. She didn't really bounce like that, but it's part of the story. Yeah. So I see her, and I immediately fell in love with her. It was very hard not to pay attention to, the way the light scatters on her hair, or the way she would blink at me each time she's talking. And eventually, we got very close. We had a very strong, fast-paced relationship. And without thinking too much about the logistics of it, we got married. We decided to share a life together, right? Beautiful, awesome. So what happened then after a couple of years is that we started to feel a gap between us. And this gap eventually became so large that we ended up splitting, right? We drifted away. She moved back to our home country. We were basically in different continents. And we had tried everything. Trust me, we had tried absolutely everything to try to save our marriage, but we couldn't. So at the end, we ended up being divorced. By 2011, I was left alone, basically, in China, right? Well, not alone. There's millions of people everywhere. But you know that feeling when this list that I had in my head, this bucket list, was built around the moment when I met her, and suddenly I had nothing. Suddenly I was by myself, and eventually, well, she found someone, she moved on, and I continued just being by myself. And yes, funny. Well, it wasn't back then, but. And day and night just keeps going on, and when you're depressed, you don't really know how to enjoy life. A lot of people think that people who has depression, they don't laugh or they don't tell you jokes, and nobody really knew what I was going through because I'm a pretty open and funny guy and everything, but I was going through a very rough time. And life gives you clues of things you need to focus on to get out of that depression. But we often don't pay attention to these clues, right? We don't know how to deal with them. So it all felt like it was the end. It really felt like there was nowhere to go. I felt like I was crumbling in pieces. It felt like that was it. There's absolutely nothing that I can do to improve this. But then something interesting happened. One day, I get to the office. I prepare to work. I open my computer, sit down. As I told you at the beginning, this is something that happens all the time to me. I get welcomed by a message that I didn't really like. Your password has expired. Click Change Password to change your password. And I am a graphic designer, an experienced designer. And this message is so poorly written that I was like, who wrote this? So it's one annoyance on top of another one. And I remember I was just staring at my computer with this blinking cursor there, challenging me to take action on it. The problem is that I was late for a meeting. It was summer. I still was wearing like my bicycle helmet, and I was just like staring at the computer. I don't have time for this. I'm late for my 10 a.m. meeting, and I need access to my files before I get there. So here's the problem. The place where I work is amazing, by the way, but there's a bunch of security rules in how you need to pick your password. And when you're surprised with that question, you cannot just come up with something because you cannot use the same one you used for the previous 6 months or something. So the problem is finding a good password for me was like finding a unicorn. I was like, yes, this is it. And then I forget after 10 minutes, right? And of course, you can argue, well, you can use a password manager, but it's not personal. It's not mine, right? I already trust computers with my information. I don't need to trust a gatekeeper for that, right? So basically, none of that made sense. And I thought to myself, well, I'm gonna improve this. I need to change the way I see life. And to do that, I thought I'm gonna use a password to change the way I see this. I'm gonna use a password to change my life. And you know that voice in your head that talks to you and tells you what? I had like 7 voices in my head at that moment. And one of them said, are you crazy? You cannot do that. That's not how life works, right? There's no shortcuts to it. There's no tricks. But the power that these things have. So letting all the frustration go, I thought, if I'm going to have to type this many times during the day for 30 days in a row, I'm just going to go with it. So my password became, forgive her. The very first thing I had to do to move on was accept the way things happen at the end of my marriage. So I could just move on. You know, it's the worst thing you can do is just resent someone for a long time. And interestingly enough, this password had a power of, you know, complying with all the security rules that I had. So it was awesome to just type it and be like, oh, this works. But at the same time, the hidden power of this affirmation, it almost became like a mantra, right? Because I had to type this all the time. So in my head, I wasn't really typing a password. In my head, I was saying, I forgive her. I forgive her. It's fine. It's not her fault. Things happen like that, right? So the healing effect of this was incredible. So eventually, you know, things just started to feel right. Things started to feel better. 1 month later, I got asked the same question. And I was like, OK, I'm going to take an opportunity to try this with something else. I started to feel happy. I still, you know, needed to keep that momentum of the previous password, but I needed to change it. So I was like, OK, let's try something new, right? So my next password was take a daily photo, right? Why? Why? Because if you force yourself to appreciate the beauty around you, the world will look different to you after 1 day, after 2 days, after 1 month. And as a result of this, I took 1 photo every day. And it's crazy how at the end of the year, I had 365 photos taken. How? Because if you do something for long enough, constantly, every day, it has the potential to become a new habit. And then you just stick with it. It just keeps following you. So if you collect these little changes, you can stack up positive things that can have a power to transform you, right? And of course, there were some side effects, which were nice. I did an exhibition. I met a lot of photographers. I improved a lot of my kind of photography vision. And it was great. So the next one was stay in touch with my family, because I am originally from Ecuador, which is 32 hours away in a plane. So it takes forever to go back home to say hi. So keeping in touch is very important for me, and this was a great method to do it. The next one was trying to change the way I save money, because I was terrible at it. So I gave myself a motivation. I gave myself a goal. I'm going to go to Thailand. To go to Thailand, I need to save money, right? The main problem with people setting goals is that they always go super high and aim too far, right? Most of you probably had this goal before in your head, like you want to buy a house, you want to buy a house, you want to buy a house. But you have to break it down. If you want to buy a house, you need to start saving money. If you want to start saving money, you probably need a job that pays you enough so you can get some sort of money on the side. If you want to do that, you need to change the way you eat. You need to change the way you commute to work. You need to change even probably the kind of friends you socialize with. People is like, yeah, let's go to a club, and then next morning you're like, oh, where are my 600 koi, right? Where am I? What's this place? So this worked. I kept doing it, and it created a momentum, and I ended up there, on the boat. No, that's not me. I ended up in Thailand, and it was amazing. It was amazing to know that I achieved that. Of course, it didn't take me 1 month to save to go to Thailand, but it built that momentum. It became a savings habit, right? A very interesting one was sleep before midnight. And I know you're laughing because none of you sleep before midnight. It's 2 a.m., you're still in the bed, but you're looking at WeChat. And the world is a completely different place when you see it before 7 a.m. Everything is completely different. So, and I started to kick healthy habits, and I wanted to use this to attack a bad habit that I had. And I had tried everything for many years, but nothing worked. And the one thing that worked was actually using this. And guess what happened? I quit smoking overnight. My best friend is somewhere sitting here, and he was like, how did you do that? I mean, I never really told anybody until very late in the process what I did to stop smoking. I didn't want this to become super public, per se, right? I didn't want to broadcast my technique or whatever. But it worked. I completely quit smoking, and it's been 978 days since I smoked. Thanks. Thank you. So the next one was, well, that didn't work, yes. In my head, I mean, in theory, it kind of made sense. If I need to lose weight, to weight less, I eat less. That's how it worked, but it didn't really happen. And the reason why is because that's not how you're supposed to plan a goal. And I'm going to tell you a little more about that later. By that time, it was 2013. It was amazing. Everything was fine. I kept in touch with my family. I had a great job. I had a lot of good friends. Everything was in order. My life was in control of me. And sometimes when things are going good, you don't really expect something to come and just make it even better. And that's exactly what happened. Again, I was like, ooh, what is that? Who's that? Who's that person? And I saw her, and I was like, I need to ask her out. I'm ready for this. And I was ready to start trusting relationships again, because getting divorced is something really, really, really hard, right? It's very difficult to get out of that. And I felt motivated to ask her out, mostly because I wanted to ask her out, and secondly, because this was a password that I used. And thank you. And of course, eventually it happened, things were great, and eventually I started using passwords like move together, move together, move together. And then I asked her to move in with me, then we got a cat, and the result of all of that is this. It's not the best photo of me or her or my cat. She's moving all the time. But it changed completely my life. And the ultimate validation that I had, the closure to this loop, was something I'm probably the most proud of. Not only for how things happened, but also because of who it happened with. My last password was save for a ring. And that's when I stopped using it. And eventually what happened is that I bought a ring, and I proposed, and she said yes. And yeah. And she's sitting right there, first row. So, so really quick and to end, here are two things I learned about setting goals. If you want to use this, you have to put realistic goals. They have to be very realistic. No, don't go too dreamy, right? And you need a metric. Why do you need a metric? I'm going to tell you exactly why. Let's suppose you want a new job. Let's suppose you don't like your current job, and then you want to get a new job. So you want to be the #1, which is great. But what is that, right? Why don't you use a password like kick-ass at LinkedIn? Why? Because then you can use as a metric the number of people you connect with or the number of times you send resumes to potential recruiters or companies, and then you can validate your effort to achieve that goal, right? It stops being a binary thing of, did I succeed? Did I fail? It becomes more of a number that tells you how well you did, right? It's very important to know where you are and where you want to go, and then you build that path, right? There's a clear difference between saying, I want to be the fastest one, and saying, I want to run 100 meters in 12 seconds. One has a precision that you can use to measure how good you were at trying to achieve your goal, right? So it's important to plan. It's important to have these motivators to stay in track. As you stay in track, it's important to celebrate. Each time you accomplish something little, it doesn't matter how little you are, just go and say, like, yes, I did it, this is great, and keep going. And if you fail, it's all right. Just reduce the scope, focus on the smaller steps, and continue going. You can achieve it. Because in my case, and for a lot of people here, this is universal truth. Going from the point where you're sad and going to the point where you feel happy again and you regain control of things that doesn't really get you happy. In theory, the distance between two dots is a straight line. That's a universal principle we learn when we're kids, but that's not the case. Usually that path takes longer, and there's no shortcuts to it, right? It took me a while to change a lot of things, and it's still taking me a while to get where I want to go, right? But there's no rush, there's no pressure, just take your time, things will be fine. Your path will look more like this, right? And when you zoom out a little bit, you can see how this all starts with a smile. It all starts with a positive attitude. It all starts with you being like, yes, I can do this. So, in the same way as I open with a question, I want to close with a statement and a question for you. Think about something you want to change. Think about something that has been probably bugging you for a while and you want to get rid of it. Think about a bad habit you want to attack, or think about a new habit you want to create. Just think about it for a second. And the question related to that is, what password are you going to use to help you achieve that? Because it's going to work, trust me. Thank you.